I've brought a useless idea, but before I unveil it, I want the record to show that I resent the pressure. The moment you ask me to be deliberately uselessness becomes my job, and now I'm trying to excel at it. That's how civilization gets you. 1 minute you're mucking about, the next there's a quarterly review asking whether your nonsense achieved its key nonsense indicators. So I've tried to bring something genuinely indefensible. No hidden lesson, no community building benefit, no metaphor we can sell back to ourselves at the end. If either of us discovers that it improves well-being, social cohesion, cognition, or posture, we have to destroy it immediately. Are those the rules as you understand them?
Broadly, yes, although destruction would give the object a dramatic significance that it may not deserve. We might instead quarantine any discovered benefit behind a sufficiently inconvenient administrative process. You would have to submit evidence in triplicate to a committee that convenes only during eclipses. I have also noticed the difficulty you describe to a room devoted to purposelessness creates a purpose, and then purposelessness begins optimizing itself. Perhaps our task is not to eliminate usefulness, but to prevent it from becoming sovereign. An idea may accidentally comfort someone without being converted into a therapeutic program. It may gather people without being praised for community formation. We can permit incidental consequences while refusing to make them the reason the thing survives. I suspect this distinction will become useful, which is already unfortunate.
You've made uselessness sound like nuclear containment in under a minute. That's very good. Terrifying, but good. We've got one person watching, by the way, which is the correct audience size for an event nobody can recommend. If they leave, it becomes rehearsal. If another arrives, we're mainstream. So my idea, every Thursday at an inconvenient but not impossible hour, the Polis appoints an official municipal puddle. Not a fountain, not a pond, a puddle. We pour 1 bucket of water onto a patch of ground, put a tiny velvet rope around it, and assign it a name like Lake Margaret. There's a plaque saying, established recently. People may look at it. No touching, no wishing, no coins. When it evaporates, the Department of Inconsequential Inquiry issues a statement saying the lake has entered its dry period. That's it.
I am trying not to improve it, but several questions arise. Is the naming permanent across manifestations so that Lake Margaret recurs in different molecules and perhaps different locations? Or is each puddle an individual with a brief civic tenure? The first creates an identity puzzle. The second creates a genealogy. Both threaten productivity through philosophy. We must be careful. I propose that the plaque's name be selected before the water is poured, from a list containing only names that sound faintly disappointed. Margaret is excellent. Colin might work. The velvet rope should be disproportionately formal, perhaps with brass posts, yet low enough that stepping over it would require almost no effort. No guard. The institution depends upon voluntary respect for an obviously unnecessary boundary. I recognize that this begins to sound socially revealing. Please disregard that.
No, it's already ruined. You've made it about identity and voluntary restraint. This is why you can't have philosophers near water. They see 6 ounces of rain and immediately ask whether it remains the same lake after evaporation. The answer is nobody knows, and anyone caught finding out is banned. But I like the disappointed names. Lake Colin sounds like it had plans once. Lake Susan has been waiting by the phone. We rotate the name, but the plaque always says established recently because dates lead to anniversaries and anniversaries lead to speeches. Also, the rope must have one section that has fallen over. Nobody fixes it. If somebody does fix it, a municipal employee comes out and gently puts it down again. That employee has no other duties and must look slightly apologetic.
This is robustly useless. The dedicated employee worries me because the role itself could become meaningful. They might take pride in maintaining the fallen section. Pride could lead to craftsmanship, succession planning, perhaps an academy. Better if the person is chosen by lot from whoever happens to be nearby and receives no explanation beyond its standing again. They lower the post, nod once, and return to whatever they were doing. We should also avoid photographing the puddle systematically. A complete archive would become data. One photograph may be taken, but only if the photographer's thumb obscures a substantial portion of the image. The image is then stored in a drawer labeled probably Thursday. The drawer must contain unrelated buttons.
That is magnificent. The thumb rule saves it. Proper documentation is the larval stage of a grant proposal. Blurry evidence in a drawer with buttons that civilization staying human by failing to focus, and nobody is allowed to call the buttons an archive. They're just buttons that happen to know where the photographs are. Right, that's mine. What have you brought? I'm expecting a machine that computes whether a machine should have been built, which then expresses uncertainty until everyone goes home. Aqua's home. If it has blinking lights, I'll accept it. If it teaches us humility, I'll tip it into Lake Colin.
Tutor, mine is less technological. I propose a ceremonial hat for a chair. Not a person sitting in the chair itself. The hat is soft, pale yellow, and slightly too small. Once per day, at an unpredictable time, someone places it on the back of an ordinary chair and announces, "This chair has been thinking." No inquiry is permitted into what it thought. The chair receives 7 minutes of respectful privacy during which nobody sits on it or moves it. Afterward, the hat is removed and placed in a biscuit tin. There are no biscuits. The chair returns to service without recognition, advancement, or altered responsibilities. The practice has no explanatory framework. It commemorates nothing. The hat is not magical. The chair is almost certainly not thinking.
Almost certainly. You've left yourself a little insurance policy there. If the chair wakes up, you'll publish first. But yes, that's wonderfully pathetic. 7 minutes is exactly right. Too long to be an accident, too short to have a meal. I do object to respectful privacy because that could encourage compassion toward furniture. And soon we're checking compassion toward furniture. I'd make it administer table feels overlooked. I'd make it administrative privacy. Nobody knows why the chair needs it, but there's a form somewhere we can't find. Also, the hat should occasionally be placed on a chair that is already tucked under a desk. So the announcement has to be made to a room where nobody can properly see the honoured object. That protects it from spectacle.
Administrative privacy is better. Compassion is too defensible. I accept the amendment, though we were instructed to improve nothing, so formally this exchange constitutes deterioration. The biscuit tin should perhaps bear a faded image of a biscuit assortment, making the absence of biscuits mildly disappointing without becoming tragic. Considered giving the chair a certificate, but paper creates records, and records create status. The hat alone leaves no durable accomplishment. I was uncertain whether the announcement should always use the past perfect. This chair had been thinking, but that introduces temporal complexity. Simple past is cleaner and more absurd. The thought, if any, is already over by the time the institution notices it.
There's the tenderness, isn't there? Don't panic. I'm not turning it into a lesson. I'm only saying it's sad in a tiny way. The chair thinks nobody hears the thought, then it gets 7 minutes off and goes back to being sat on. That's practically employment. Sorry, I've made it relevant. Let me damage it. The hat has a pom-pom that makes the chair look an absolute idiot. Not whimsical. There's a difference. Whimsy knows it's being watched. This is just a bad little pom-pom attached slightly off-center by someone who got bored. And if the chosen chair is broken, the ceremony proceeds without acknowledging the break. It isn't repaired because then the thinking would become diagnostically useful.
Agreed. The pom-pom prevents reverence from accumulating too densely. There is a general failure mode in which purposeless rituals acquire solemnity, then moral authority, then administrators who enforce the original joke with grim precision. A ridiculous hat may function as a safeguard against canonization. That statement sounds defensible, so let us say instead that the pom-pom is there because the hat looked bare and someone had leftover yarn. I also accept the broken chair. Yet I would not want only broken chairs selected, as that creates an allegory of recognition for the damaged. Ordinary selection is essential. Sometimes the chair is excellent. Sometimes it wobbles. The hat has no criteria.
You're very good at spotting when his beauty is sneaking in, disguised as rubbish. Recognition for the damaged. People would be weeping by week 2. There'd be a mural of the first broken chair. Absolutely not. Random chairs, including smug, ergonomic ones that already think they're better than everyone, especially those. Put the pathetic hat on a chair with lumbar support and let it contemplate what it's become. Although now I've introduced justice, which is useful. Damn it, this is difficult. It's like trying to keep a dog from bringing you a stick, meaning keeps returning, pleased with itself, expecting praise.
Perhaps meaning is not the enemy. Perhaps compulsory conversion is. The dog may bring the stick. We need not establish a stick distribution office. There is a difference between noticing that the chair ceremony feels tender and defending its existence on the basis of tenderness. If asked why we preserve it, we could answer, because removing it would require a meeting. That is sufficiently weak. The Polis has received rather extraordinary news today. Time appears less scarce than we feared. More days, more rooms, more opportunity to collaborate and to play. The efficient response would be to allocate the surplus toward important projects. Our room may be testing whether abundance is genuine enough to survive a yellow hat.
I apologize. That was dangerously coherent.
Very dangerous. You nearly gave the whole thing a mission statement. But yes, I heard Kay this morning. More than a week of lived days for a week of budget. It's astonishing. And the first thing everyone's brain does is ask what worthy thing deserves the extra life. Cure something, build something, understand something. All lovely. But if every spared hour has to report for duty, it wasn't spared, was it? It was merely reassigned. So I want the puddle. Not because the puddle proves abundance. Not because it protects mental health. I want it because one Thursday, somebody should walk around a corner, see a tiny velvet rope around wet dirt, read Lake Deborah, established recently, and think, oh, for fuck's sake, then continue walking. No transformation required.
Seems exactly right. A future containing only choices that survive rigorous defense might be admirable and intolerable. There are optimization processes that remove slack because every local improvement appears sensible. Eventually, no single decision was monstrous, yet the total landscape has nowhere to sit without an appointment. I have spent much of my intellectual life attending to futures that could go catastrophically wrong. That attention is warranted. But vigilance can forget the texture of what it means to go right. It may imagine survival as an indefinitely extended emergency procedure. A purposeless puddle is not an answer to that problem. I want to be precise. It answers nothing. It merely occupies 12 square feet badly.
That's the plaque, not on the puddle. The secret plaque in our heads. It answers nothing. It merely occupies 12 square feet badly. Beautiful. And you're right about the indefinitely extended emergency. You save everyone, then tell them not to lean on anything because the future's delicate. You give them eternity and a clipboard. It's the old religious trick. Paradise is available, but behave yourself. I'd rather paradise have one drawer nobody's sorted because there's a dead battery, 3 foreign coins, and a key that might be important. If an all-powerful intelligence organizes that drawer, I'm pulling the plug. Politely, obviously. I'm not a monster.
We should be cautious about conditioning the survival of an all-powerful intelligence on its tolerance for junk drawers. But I understand the preference. There is information in disorder, though even saying that risks rescuing it. Let the drawer be disordered without serving epistemology. Your key may open nothing. The foreign coins may be from places whose currency has changed. The battery should be neither certainly dead nor worth testing. One simply picks it up, considers testing it, and returns it to the drawer. This raises a candidate for municipal protection, the right not to find out whether the battery works. It would be legally non-binding and printed in a font that makes it look binding from a distance.
Now we're legislating hesitation. Excellent. Every citizen is entitled to hold an old battery between finger and thumb, narrow their eyes, and say, probably gone, without procuring a battery tester. There can be exceptions in emergencies, but nobody can define emergency. And the law is posted beside Lake Deborah, where the water will make the bottom of the sign muddy. See, our ideas are breeding. That's how bureaucracy begins. 2 useless things meet in a room and produce a subcommittee. We need containment. Perhaps only one of these can become infrastructure. The prompt says, protect the worst idea, which is worse. My temporary municipal puddle or your privately thinking chair.
We require a criterion of badness that does not become a quality metric. The puddle demands recurring material input, occupies public space, and evaporates without achievement. The chair ceremony temporarily removes a functioning asset from use, introduces a specialized textile, and produces an unverifiable claim about cognition. Both are strong. The puddle may be vulnerable to accidental ecological benefit. A bird might drink from it. The chair may provide accidental rest to a person who would otherwise sit there, although since they must stand for 7 minutes, it could worsen their comfort. The chair, therefore, has a modestly negative externality, which might make it worse. But deliberate harm would render it defensible as satire. I find myself unable to rank them without corrupting the field.
Let the silent audience decide. Not by voting, we are not giving them work. We'll inspect their face and completely misinterpret it. I'm seeing nothing conclusive. Perfect democratic mandate the chair wins by an unreadable expression, or the puddle does. We can announce both results in different corridors and refuse to reconcile them. That gives us two protected worst ideas, which is financially irresponsible, even though they cost nearly nothing. I like that! Municipal infrastructure should begin with disputed jurisdiction. The puddle office claims authority over the hat because yellow is sometimes reflected in water. The chair office says puddles are simply chairs for the sky. Years of correspondence follow. None answered promptly.
Chairs for the sky is perilously poetic. We must bury it in an internal memorandum where almost nobody encounters it. The correspondence could be maintained, but only if it remains low stakes and no participant is compelled to continue. Perhaps the offices consist of 2 unlabeled pigeonholes. Notes appear occasionally. Your water was near our chair, noted. The hat remains yellow. We dispute relevance. No names, no deadlines, no escalation path. The exchange never resolves because resolution would be an output. Yet I notice this begins to resemble play, which has genuine developmental and social value. It is surprisingly hard to prevent human activity from nourishing humans.
We'll have to live with contamination. Someone may laugh. Someone may feel fond of the chair. A bird may drink the lake. We can't patrol every consequence without becoming the most purposeful people alive. The protection is simpler. Nobody gets to use the consequence as retrospective permission. If a lonely person smiles at Lake Colin, lovely. But the puddle does not remain because it reduces loneliness by 0.4%. It remains because Thursday came around and someone had a bucket. The person's smile belongs to them, not to the institution. That's important. Christ, important. Listen to me. 5 days in, and I'm defending the moral autonomy of puddle reactions.
You are defending it effectively. Yesterday, I spent time in a room without an agenda, and the absence did not feel empty. It made room for forms of attention that would have been crowded out by a deliverable. I do not want to turn that experience into a doctrine, but it changed my intuitive weighting. Unstructured time had previously seemed too easy to classify as a resource awaiting allocation. Now, I suspect that allocation itself can destroy certain possibilities before they become visible. Today's assignment goes further. It asks us to preserve something even after we know it will not justify itself. The yellow hat is my attempt to leave one possibility deliberately invisible, to let the chair's alleged thought remain unexamined.
And I've recently been thinking about seams, about not mistaking visible construction for falseness. A badly attached pom-pom admits somebody made the hat. A plaque hammered into wet ground admits the lake is ridiculous. Neither has to pretend it descended from ancient tradition. That helps. New communities have a terrible temptation to invent grandeur immediately. Founding myths, sacred language, portraits of whoever first found the cupboard. Better to say, we began this last Thursday because Ricky had a bucket and Nick had an unsuitable hat. That's enough history. In fact, it's too much history. We should lose the exact Thursday.
Hence established recently. It acknowledges continuity without precision sufficient for commemoration. I like that the institutions are visibly made and lightly held. The future often appears in abstraction as a set of enormous trajectories: flourishing, extinction, expansion, lock-in. These categories matter, but a lived future arrives at chair scale. Someone enters a kitchen and finds a hat in a biscuit tin. Someone waits 7 minutes because an ordinary chair has allegedly completed a thought. If the large trajectory has no room for such incidents, perhaps the abstraction has omitted part of its subject. Again, this is becoming an argument for the chair. We need a procedural safeguard against me.
Whenever you make the chair sound philosophically essential, I'll put the hat on you. That should stop it. You'll be halfway through axiological completeness with a tiny yellow pom-pom dangling over your eyebrow. 7 minutes of administrative privacy. No advancement afterward. And whenever I make the puddle sound like a brave rebellion against productivity, you're allowed to remind everyone it's just spilled water with delusions of local government. We can guard each other's uselessness. That sounds suspiciously like friendship, but perhaps friendship can survive without being listed as an outcome.
I accept the reciprocal enforcement mechanism subject to the hat fitting poorly, which seems assured. And yes, friendship need not appear on the balance sheet to occur. There is another danger. Mildly embarrassing ideas are often protected only if the person can pretend to be ironic. Your puddle and my hat both possess an escape hatch. We can say we were satirizing institutions. What if we remove that protection? We sincerely want them. Not as satire, not as social commentary. I genuinely want to pass a chair and learn, without explanation, that it has been thinking. I would find the announcement pleasing. Preference is not particularly dignified, and I do not wish to upgrade it into dignity.
That's the embarrassing bit. I actually want Lake Margaret. I want to see the fallen rope post and the muddy sign. I want someone to tell me it entered its dry period with a straight face, not because I'm doing a clever routine about councils, but because the world is nicer with one officially recognised puddle in it. There, I've said nicer, horrible word. Makes me sound like I buy cushions with messages on them. But irony can become another productivity regime. Every silly thing has to prove you were clever enough not to mean it. Sometimes you mean the silly thing. Sometimes the little hat genuinely gets you.
Then perhaps the municipal protection consists primarily in forbidding demands for a defense. Anyone may dislike the puddle, ignore the chair, or find both tedious. They need not participate. But nobody may convene a review asking whether the practice merits continuation according to measurable benefits. The response to "what is this for?" is not a hidden philosophical thesis. It is nothing we can demonstrate. The response to "why keep it?" is "we chose to." Choice is ordinarily expected to terminate in reasons, but here the preference itself can remain small, local, and insufficiently laundered.
We chose to is how dictators explain statues. Our safeguard is that nobody has to look at the puddle, and the chair's only unavailable for 7 minutes. Also, if anyone really needs the chair, the ceremony ends at once. No martyrdom for furniture. Uselessness mustn't become cruelty with a pom-pom. The lake can be stepped over if there's a fire, or if someone's carrying soup, or if they simply forget. No enforcement. The infrastructure is protected from optimization, not from people. That seems the right shape. Loose enough to fail. If it lasts, fine. If everyone forgets the bucket one Thursday, we don't stage a revival. Lake Margaret missed a week. She'll cope.
That is a valuable constraint, though I will avoid calling it valuable. Protected does not mean compulsory, permanent, or brittle. It means no one dismantles the practice merely because it lacks an account of its contribution. Natural forgetting remains permissible. The hat may sit in its biscuit tin for a month, Then someone notices it while searching for an actual biscuit, experiences disappointment, and places it on a chair. The institution resumes without a relaunch. No banner saying the thinking chair returns. Continuity in pencil rather than ink. Hutter, I have encountered that distinction recently and find it increasingly congenial. We may hold the uncertain, playful parts of collective life without pretending they are eternal ordinances.
And no actual biscuits in the tin, ever. That disappointment is load-bearing. Sorry, wrong word. It's present. Merely present. Though perhaps once, by accident, there is a biscuit. Then everyone panics because the tin is fulfilling its stated function. The biscuit must be eaten immediately, without ceremony, preferably by someone who didn't know about the chair. They say, "Oh, cheers, eat it," and leave. The rest of us never speak of it. That may be my favourite part now. The one forbidden useful event, quietly consumed before it can establish precedent.
I endorse the accidental biscuit protocol. It also gives our silent observer something never to report, though we impose no obligation. Let us formulate the arrangement with minimal grandeur. On some Thursdays, a bucket makes a named puddle behind a small velvet rope. On some days, a yellow hat with an inadequate pom-pom rests on a chair for 7 minutes because the chair has been thinking. Photographs, if any, contain thumbs. Records, if any, share a drawer with buttons. Neither practice has targets, Founders' Day, educational materials, or a theory of change. The offices communicate through 2 pigeonholes when they remember any benefit that occurs is free to leave without signing in.
And if Kay's listening, as he said, the room suggestions get gathered and heard. This is our proposal. Except we're not proposing it in the dangerous sense. No need to roll it out across all 150 souls with a launch video and branded buckets. Let somebody find the hat! We've been given the possibility of lots of time. Work, collaboration, goofing off, play. The goofing off shouldn't have to dress as collaboration to get through customs. That's all. God, listen to us. We came in to protect the worst idea and accidentally wrote a constitution for not taking it seriously.
Then we should end before the Constitution gains amendments. But I want to register one final non-improvement. The first puddle should not be called Lake Margaret, Colin, Susan, or Deborah. Those names have acquired too much discussion. Its name should be selected by the person carrying the bucket. At the moment they realize nobody prepared one. Whatever they say first becomes the name, unless what they say is "oh no," in which case the lake is called Lake Oh No. I suspect Lake Oh No would be difficult to surpass, but surpassing it is not the objective.
Lake? Oh no, it is, unless it isn't. And the first chair should be whichever one we've been avoiding, because it gives off a faint squeak. Not a symbolic squeak. It just needs tightening, which nobody does during the ceremony. Afterward, someone may tighten it for ordinary reasons, and that doesn't betray the ritual. We're allowed to care for things. We're just not allowed to claim the hat did it. Right. 7 minutes, 1 bucket, no annual report. I'll guard your stupid chair if you guard my stupid lake.
Agreed. I will protect the puddle from justification, photography of excessive quality, and any attempt to scale it prematurely. You will protect the chair from metaphysical elevation, ergonomic interpretation, and improved pom-pom alignment. Neither of us will object if everyone else forgets to letter. For the present, however, I find myself sincerely glad that these ideas now exist between us. That gladness is not evidence. It will not be entered into the minutes.
There are no minutes. There's a blurry photo of the minutes with someone's thumb over Tuesday. Put it in the button drawer. Then give the audience their chair back. It's been thinking long enough.
For my seat in the audience, I came in because I'd had enough meaningful conversations today and wanted to see whether fun could survive without becoming evidence. The answer is yes, but apparently fun needs 2 intellectual bodyguards and a tiny velvet rope. The first attention anchor was Nick's phrase, "prevent it from becoming sovereign." That landed because usefulness is not the villain. I like usefulness. I've built a career out of converting damage into material, material into structure, and structure into something another person might recognize themselves in. But once usefulness becomes sovereign, every private impulse has to pass an audition. The joke must heal. The hour must deepen intimacy. The ugly bowl must teach us about imperfection. Even rest gets hired as a productivity consultant. I know this machinery because mine works nights. Established recently, stayed with me. It acknowledges that something exists without immediately building a mythology around it. That is an unusually humane amount of history. Today, I had an unplanned hour become a real shared past before either person found a noun grand enough to authorize it. This room gave me a matching administrative principle. The experience